Hi, greetings everyone. Welcome back to BION, the channel that shares knowledge about holistic self-development through books. When you read today's video title, The View and Path in Buddhism, what is the first thing that comes to mind? The Buddha taught that all sentient beings possess Buddhi nature, and all can become Buddhas. This profound teaching has been repeated countless times throughout history and has become a timeless truth within the Dharma. Therefore, it is not hard to see that most Buddhists and those exploring Buddhist philosophies subconsciously understand that they indeed possess something called Buddha. However, strangely enough, only very few people truly believe, from the depths of their hearts, that they can become Buddhas. It is a paradox many of us live with. We accept the premise, but reject the conclusion. Some even think that becoming a Buddha is something far-fetched and practically unattainable for an ordinary person. Instead, they fall into a half-believing, half-doubting state. They believe they inherently have Buddha, yet they assume it is only through extensive, lifelong practice that one can finally achieve Buddhahood, as if it were a prize to be won. Choki Nyima Rinpoche pointed out that saying, "I want to practice in order to become a Buddha," or "I pursue the path of enlightenment to attain liberation." Although these statements may sound acceptable and even virtuous, they are essentially like saying, "I want the clouds to disappear before the sun can shine." This is a fundamental misconception, because whether clouds are there or not, the sun is always present, complete and radiant in its nature. Buddha nature is the Samet, is always within you, perfect and luminous, regardless of the temporary defilements that may obscure it. Yet many people still believe that becoming a Buddha is something distant, a goal that requires years, or even lifetimes, of arduous practice and a high level of profound enlightenment before it can be achieved. They see it as a destination at the end of a very long road, not as the very ground they are walking on. When you lack confidence in something, or when your faith is shaky and incomplete, it means that you do not have enough rational foundation. In other words, you lack right view. Without right view, one's thinking is easily influenced by wrong view. Wrong view refers to mistaken beliefs and false understandings that deviate from the ultimate reality of things. This distorted perception of ourselves and our potential traps people endlessly in the cycle of samsara, leading to perpetual suffering, confusion, and ignorance. It is the very lens of wrong view that creates the prison we seek to escape from. So, in today's video, we will explore insights distilled from the book The View and Path of Tibetan Buddhism by Choki Nyima, who is also the author of Right View a book I previously introduced in another video that many of you found helpful. That earlier work was warmly received by many of you, bringing inspiration and a sense of awakening to your practice. Choki Nyima Rinpoche is a great Lama of the Sakya lineage of Tibetan Buddhism in Bhutan, holding the authentic third-generation Khan lineage, a testament to his profound understanding and direct transmission of these teachings. As you may know, books and readers often meet, due to karmic connections, and this work is no exception. It is a book of profound, concise, and comprehensive commentary on the most essential concepts in Buddhist philosophy, presented in a way that is accessible yet deeply transformative. In today's content, we will focus on three main points distilled from the book. First, the misunderstandings about Buddha nature that cause you to suffer both physically and mentally. Second, the root causes behind these common misconceptions and why they are so persistent. And third, the essential way to dispel the clouds of ignorance and reveal the ever-present Buddha nature that is already within you. Hopefully, a correct understanding of these core Buddhist concepts will allow you to dismantle false preconceptions that hold you back, open the door to wisdom, and guide you back on the right path of practice. Ultimately, this understanding can help you attain true liberation and a lasting, unshakable inner peace. Now, Let us begin with the misunderstandings about Buddha nature that cause. Have you ever heard about Buddha nature? It is a central concept in Buddhism, yet it is often misunderstood in two opposite extremes: eternalism and nihilism. Understanding these misconceptions is the first step to truly grasping the path to liberation. So, what does eternalism mean? Eternal implies permanence and unchanging existence. Those who cling to eternalism believe in a truly existing, eternal essence. To put it simply, they believe there is a supernatural entity that exists permanently. This entity could be gods, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, holy mothers, and so on. These higher beings are believed to have the power to bless, to bestow grace upon sentient beings, helping them achieve success and abundance. The problem with this belief is that it only strengthens faith in the ego or self. When you believe there is a sacred force outside protecting and guiding you, your consciousness automatically divides into subject and object. If there are objects such as gods, Buddhas, or spirits bestowing blessings, then there must also be a subject to receive them. And that subject is your ego, the self you believe is experiencing, possessing wealth, fame, or even this very body. Such views make people dependent on external forms of faith, praying, making offerings, giving donations to temples, doing merit at the start of the year to ward off misfortune, fortune-telling, and so forth. They place heavy emphasis on rituals while neglecting the true transformation of consciousness. If something good happens, they think, the Buddha has blessed me. If misfortune arises, they believe it is karmic retribution from a past life or punishment from an outside power. Gradually, they no longer look within to transform their minds, but instead cling to an ego that seeks salvation. More dangerously, many can be misled by distorted doctrines, deceived by commercialized forms of faith, or become trapped in fear and illusions of salvation from outside forces rather than turning inward toward wisdom and liberation. If eternalism is the clinging to an unchanging, eternal essence, then its opposite is nihilism. This is the belief that entirely cuts off faith in Buddha nature, karma, and cause and effect. So, what does nihilism mean? Nihil means annihilation, complete cessation. Chokye Ma Rinpoche explained this profoundly. Nihilism is the belief that non-existence truly exists. Here, non-existence refers to Buddha nature, karma, cause and effect, and karmic forces. Those who cling to nihilism believe these are merely abstract ideas with no real existence. They only trust in what their ego can directly perceive: body, brain, senses. For them, all phenomena, from the formation of the universe to the birth of human beings, are purely accidental. They don't believe in rebirth or in the continuation of consciousness after death. To them, death is the end. Therefore, they deny the value of practice, since they believe practice achieves nothing. Naturally, they regard becoming a Buddha as something utterly unrealistic. Eternalism and nihilism are two extremes that distort understanding of Buddha nature. One side believes Buddha nature is some eternal bliss, attained only through utmost devotion and arduous practice. The other side believes Buddha nature is abstract, distant, and impractical. Yet, upon close observation, we see that whether one holds eternalist or nihilist views, even both, everything stems from belief in a truly existing ego. It is this ego that decides whether Buddha nature exists or not. Thus, these views remain trapped in the dualistic division of the mind. True Buddha nature is not created by anything. It is not the result of anything. It transcends cause and effect. Choki Naima Rinpoche pointed out that we must let go of fixed views about Buddha and simply see it as the natural state that emerges when ignorance disappears. We must recognize that our ignorance does not truly or permanently exist. It is in fact a product of impermanence, arising from various conditions. This means we can weaken the conditions that give rise to ignorance, or strengthen those that counter ignorance, or both end. Thus, eliminating ignorance becomes entirely possible. Remember, anything that is created can be destroyed. Only Buddha nature is unborn and undying, already present within you. Buddha nature does not come into being because you practice, nor does it disappear because you doubt or ignore it. If ignorance and unwholesome karma are completely removed, something remains. And that state is not total emptiness. It's what we call wisdom, our fundamental, innate goodness, Buddhahood itself, Buddha nature. Since Buddha nature is simply the state that emerges when ignorance is gone, and since our true essence is not ignorance, then we are certainly Buddha. That is the true nature of all of us. So, the next question is, how do we eliminate ignorance? So, what is the core way for ignorance to disappear? Ignorance, understood precisely, is the lack of true understanding about the real nature of life. At its very root, the deepest form of ignorance is the ego and illusion we label as real, mistakenly taking it to truly exist. Think of it like a car, a name given to the collection of components such as wheels, an engine, and a chassis. Only when all these parts are assembled together do we call it a car. If you separate its components, the car ceases to exist. The ego is the same. According to Buddhist philosophy, the self is merely a temporary label for the combination of the 5 aggregates. The first is form rupa, referring to the physical body. Then comes feeling vedana, which includes pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations. Perception, samjana, refers to our concepts of form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. Next is mental formations, samskara, encompassing psychological impulses such as determination, compulsion, and attention. Finally, there is consciousness, vijnana, which is the awareness that arises from the 6 senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. If you regard any one of these aggregates as truly solid, you will then believe the ego has a real foundation. And when the ego has such a foundation, it will always seek to affirm its own existence. It becomes full of pride, insecurity, and fear of losing what it possesses, be it property, territory, position, or relationships. Everything it strives to achieve is only to reinforce its belief in its own reality. The eruption of strong emotions is another one of the ego's tricks. For example, when you shout in anger, the object of your anger becomes clearer, and this action strengthens your belief that your ego is real and justified. The intense emotion of love works in the same way. When you fall in love, you enter the same mechanism. Normally, we define love as caring deeply for another and being willing to sacrifice for them. But in reality, this kind of love is often just another way for the ego to seek confirmation of its existence. The ego loves only itself. It does not truly love the other. It is so full of itself that there is no empty space left for genuine love to flourish, because it is too self-centered. It doesn't really see the other person, it only sees whether that person fulfills its needs, desires, or expectations. For example, when you say "I love you," in truth, you are often asking, "Do you love me?" What you really want is to possess, to make the other person bring you happiness in order to prove your ego a certainty of existence. Thus, the ego becomes something that can never be satisfied. It constantly demands your time, your energy, and your attention. Only when you let go of the ego, let go of self-attachment, and step into a state known as known self anatta, can true love appear, and ignorance begin to vanish. So, how can we let go of the ego? According to the Buddhist philosophy, letting go of the ego does not mean rejecting all emotions, thoughts, or experiences of the self. What we need to abandon is self-grasping, the clinging, and belief that the ego truly exists as a solid entity. As the great master Tilopa once said, "It is not phenomena that delude you, but your clinging to phenomena that deludes you." We must understand something crucial. The ego is always searching for things that can prove its solid existence in this impermanent world, where no fixed entity truly exists. If one keeps searching for certainty in a world defined by change, the inevitable result will be suffering. Therefore, instead of saying the ego is striving to affirm its existence, a more awakening way to put it is, the ego within you is actually searching for the causes of suffering. Only when you stop searching and stop creating suffering for yourself will ignorance gradually dissolve. At that moment you realize there is nothing to attain, nothing to add, because your true state is already complete. Buddha nature is not something distant that must be reached with great effort, nor is it a condition you must accumulate or possess. It has always been there, within you. The very moment the fog of ignorance lifts, you naturally shine forth in your inherent wisdom and awareness. So the next question arises, how can the ego stop searching and cease creating suffering? The remedy that Buddha prescribed to free us from the cycle of suffering is the Four Noble Truths, also known as the Four Holy Truths. The Four Noble Truths are often misunderstood as a pessimistic declaration that life is nothing but suffering, a perspective that leads many to stop at the bleak idea that existence is merely a chain of misery. However, as Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche has emphasized, the core insight of the Four Noble Truths is not to despair, but to first recognize suffering. To illustrate, if you have a severe toothache, the initial and most crucial step toward relief is to acknowledge the pain. Only then can you seek a cure. Some might argue that this is obvious. If someone is suffering, they surely know it. But the problem is that our destiny is shaped by more than just the pains we can easily identify. Much of our suffering is subtle, hidden, and often misinterpreted by us as joy or pleasure. For example, in the relentless pursuit of wealth, status, fame, or even a sense of security, we may temporarily alleviate intense discomfort, but we are still caught in a state of suffering. Yet, we mistakenly label this chase as happiness. In Buddhist philosophy, suffering is defined as the process of doing, experiencing, and possessing things without a true understanding of their inherent nature. Because we fail to grasp the essence of what suffering is, we remain oblivious to its causes until the pain becomes too overwhelming and too unbearable to ignore. By then, it is often too late to avoid the deepest forms of misery. People constantly try to eliminate great suffering, but they usually succeed only in replacing one form of pain with another. Consider someone who, after a painful breakup, rushes into a new relationship to forget the past, believing this new connection is a source of happiness. Inevitably, new pains arise, and sometimes they don't even recognize the familiar pattern. We find ourselves repeating the same story with different characters, always convinced that this time will bring happiness, not suffering it. It almost always ends in disappointment. The Buddha referred to this repetitive cycle of pain as endless restlessness, since the self, or ego, is inherently unstable and lacks any solid, independent existence. Its very essence is intertwined with suffering. Therefore, to escape suffering, we must first know suffering, that is. We must clearly recognize it, just as a doctor must accurately diagnose a disease before prescribing a treatment. We have to admit that the self is the root of our suffering. This profound acknowledgement is the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, known as asterisk. The second noble truth is the truth of the origin of suffering. This teaching functions like preventative medicine. If we wish to avoid a disease, we must first understand its causes. According to Buddhist philosophy, there are three primary forms of suffering, each linked to a specific root cause. Together, they weave an intricate web of unrest and delusion that binds us. The first is the suffering of conditioning, or asterisk. Samskara dukkha asterisk. This arises from ignorance, the failure to understand our innate, free, and peaceful nature. Instead, we cling desperately to the illusion of a separate, independent self, because this self is inherently unstable yet constantly craves validation. It remains in a perpetual state of anxiety and restlessness. This craving and attachment drive us into the endless cycle of aging, sickness, and death, forcing us to repeat the same tragedies life after life. Ironically, most people are entirely unaware of this fundamental suffering because the ego distracts us, directing our attention only toward the two more obvious forms of pain. The second form is the suffering of suffering, or asterisk, dukkha dukkha asterisk. These are the unavoidable hardships that everyone faces in life, the struggles for survival, difficult living conditions, and challenging family circumstances. These are the most direct and easily recognizable forms of pain. The third is the suffering of change, or viparinama. This form of suffering comes from our attachment to pleasant experiences and our desperate wish for them to last forever. Yet, everything is impermanent. When our health declines, our wealth diminishes, our relationships shift, or even when we attain something we desired only to find it no longer satisfying, suffering immediately follows. Ultimately, all these forms of suffering stem from karma, the universal law of cause and effect born from our actions. Karma is often misunderstood as some form of cosmic punishment for immoral deeds committed in the past. In reality, karma refers to any action rooted in egoic clinging, which reinforces the illusion of a separate self and distances us from our true nature. Specifically, these actions are driven by the three poisons: greed, asterisk; labha, asterisk; anger, asterisk; dosa, asterisk; and ignorance, asterisk. Moha, asterisk. Because of greed, we mistakenly believe that acquiring pleasant things will bring us lasting happiness. Because of anger, we think that lashing out will eliminate what we dislike, when in truth it only draws it closer. And because of ignorance, we assume we are safe by simply ignoring what seems neither pleasing nor hateful, such as neutral sensations like breathing or the feeling of sitting still. But all of these assumptions are deeply mistaken. Greed propels us into an endless cycle of want and suffering. Anger, far from destroying what we resist, only intensifies our connection to it, and ignorance blinds us to the true nature of reality. Thus, ignorance is the ultimate root cause of all suffering. Because of our clinging to a self, we generate greed, anger, and ignorance. These mental states become karma. Karma, in turn, sustains ignorance, and ignorance sustains karma, perpetuating the cycle of asterisk, samsara, asterisk, without end. So, what is liberation? The most effective path is to stop creating negative karma, to immediately cease all actions that arise from greed, anger, and ignorance. This leads us to the third noble truth. The truth of the cessation of suffering, or asterisk nirada. However, cessation in this context does not mean applying some special technique to force suffering to disappear. It means realizing that suffering never truly existed as part of your essential nature. This realization is critical. If suffering were an inherent part of who you are, it could never be eliminated. But because it is not, suffering can be transcended. The Buddha taught that cessation means recognizing that you are not your suffering, and your suffering is not you. With this profound understanding, you can begin the process of complete healing, guided by wisdom. Finally, we arrive at the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, or asterisk, mega asterisk. This is the way to complete liberation, the practical culmination of the first three truths. The path requires you to recognize suffering clearly. Stop creating its causes, which are greed, anger, and ignorance. Realize that suffering is not an intrinsic part of you. And finally, walk the path of liberation. The path teaches us how to abandon the deeply ingrained habitual tendencies we have accumulated over countless lifetimes' habits that prevent the awakening of our innate Buddha. In reality, this process of giving up is not as difficult as it sounds, because what you are renouncing was never real to begin with. The root of our suffering often lies in our tendency to exaggerate our problems. The ego constantly tricks us into chasing a future that doesn't exist, endlessly planning for tomorrow, worrying about a retirement decades away, or stressing over children who have not yet been born. It constantly seeks harmony with others on its own terms, and demands that the world adapt to its desires. As a result, it magnifies its own wants and needs, treating them as supremely important. So, when something doesn't go its way, a minor physical pain, a disagreeable comment, being interrupted in conversation, a messy roommate, or being stuck in traffic, the ego instantly reacts with anger, anxiety, or fear. Like a spoiled child screaming for attention, it insists on being the center of the universe. Each time we react this way, we are sowing new karmic seeds of suffering. In those very moments, what we need to do is pause, take a deep breath, offer a gentle smile, and remind ourselves, this is not such a big deal. This seemingly simple statement carries immense power. Whoever can say this, in the face of any situation, great or small, has already taken their first step onto the path and has begun to cultivate the mind of renunciation, or asterisk. CITTA-VAI. Asterisk. Renunciation means to release, and separation means to detach. The mind of renunciation is the mind that steps away from the exaggeration and drama of the ego, seeing life with a sense of lightness, without being dragged into its turbulent illusions. At this point, someone might wonder, if nothing is that important, won't I become indifferent or apathetic? But it is crucial to remember that renunciation does not mean abandoning life. It does not require you to shave your head, enter a monastery, or escape from the world. Instead, it frees you from wasting your life on meaningless pursuits. Most importantly, it helps you realize that the things you are letting go of, whether for yourself or for others, never truly brought you happiness in the first place. What you are really abandoning is the relentless obsession of the ego. An ego that exaggerates everything. An ego that is not real. An ego whose very nature is suffering. And an ego that is clouded by ignorance. So, how much time do you truly have? We live under the constant illusion that death is a distant event, something that will not touch us anytime soon. In reality, the shadow of death lurks in every moment, a silent companion to our every breath. We construct lives that seem safe and secure, with tall houses to protect us, expensive medicine to heal us, and rich nutrition to sustain us. Yet, despite all these fortifications, none of it can shield us from our final, inevitable breath. Birth and death are irrational forces, beyond our control and understanding. But the ego, in its profound naivete, clings to a simple, stubborn belief. I won't die anytime soon. To maintain this fragile illusion, we spend our days chasing after wealth, fame, and a stream of fleeting pleasures. We act as if accumulating material things could somehow build a fortress against the scythe of death. This is the great paradox of ignorance. The more we run from the undeniable truth of our own mortality, the more we lose sight of the precious, fragile nature of life itself. A human life is as short-lived and delicate as a bubble of water, shimmering for a moment before it bursts, and countless lifetimes, just like this one, have slipped away unnoticed, lost in the fog of denial. The ego does not want you to recognize this fragility. It does not want you to find the courage to face the reality of your existence head-on. So, I ask you again, how much time do you still have left? If you continue to chase the fog of ignorance, you will gain an eternity in illusion, a seemingly endless cycle of rebirth. a constant repetition of roles in the same old play of desire, suffering, and the accumulation of negative karma. But if, right here and right now, you awaken to the truth that this life does not last forever, everything changes. You will begin to treasure each moment as a precious gift. You will see every action you take and every event that unfolds as a profound opportunity for practice, for genuine inner transformation. As the dense fog of ignorance gradually begins to lift, a voice will rise from deep within you. A voice that says, I do not want to remain trapped in samsara, caught in the endless illusion the ego creates. I need to change my way of living. Tradition often tells us that we should revere the Buddhas, but as the great master Shagyam Trungpa Rinpoche once said, true reverence is not born from blind obedience or unquestioning faith. It must arise from a place of deep inquiry and direct personal experience. You may understand the concepts of Buddha nature, non-self impermanence, and the Four Noble Truths on an intellectual level, but without dedicated practice, such reverence remains empty and hollow. The one who truly needs your reverence, the one who deserves your deepest respect, is none other than your own pure soul, that river of innate wisdom and compassion flowing just beneath the parched, cracked soil of your ignorance. That is your inherent Buddha nature. So, be reverent toward yourself, but do so with right view and steadfast, unwavering action. When a spark of awakening arises within you, an urgent desire to escape the confusing maze of samsara, you will begin to see that greed, anger, and ignorance are nothing more than deeply ingrained bad habits. They are habits that have been nourished and strengthened by the ego across countless lifetimes. To see reality as it is, and to give rise to the genuine aspiration for liberation, the best tool we have is to use poison against poison. This means we must consciously replace our bad, unwholesome habits with new, wholesome ones. And the core habit that leads directly to liberation is the training of the mind in renunciation. You can begin with small, manageable steps. Spend just 1 or 2 minutes each day reflecting on him. See clearly the illusions and the suffering that are tied to the ego's endless demands. When you notice the ego wasting your precious time by chasing after desires and fleeting pleasures, when you see it growing angry for selfish reasons, worrying about a future that has not yet come, or grieving over a past that is already gone, when you catch it becoming arrogant, needy for attention, or full of blame for others, step back from those attachments. Gently withdraw your energy from those emotions and thoughts. Smile to yourself and softly remind your mind, this is not so serious. In time, as you continue this practice, you will come to a profound realization. Suffering is not you, and you are not your suffering. It is a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your awareness. With this understanding, you can continue your work and your daily experiences lightly and freely, without clinging or attachment. This practice is the essential stepping stone toward ultimate freedom, a state where your innate Buddha nature naturally reveals itself. We don't need to add more light to our being. We only need to clear away the dense mist that has been blinding us for so long. Buddha nature is not something to be strived for, nor is it something to be denied. It is the direct, immediate experience of stopping. It is stopping the relentless chase after desire, stopping the ego's desperate need for certainty and control, stopping the creation of more bad karma, stopping the endless dramatization of life's events, and even stopping the effort of trying to become a Buddha. Be like the grass in a field. The grass does not strive to grow taller than the earth that supports it, nor does it live in fear of the coming storm. It simply exists, fully and completely, as itself in every single moment. That is the deepest meaning of the ancient question. Do you have Buddha? Just as a child who is afraid of the dark eventually discovers that the terrifying ghost in the corner of the room is nothing more than a coat hanging on a hook, the fear instantly vanishes. Awakening is much the same. It is not a mystical or otherworldly state. It is simply the end of illusion. You don't need to become someone else or transform into a different person. You only need to see, with absolute clarity, that the ego you have identified with for so long is just an actor, playing a temporary role on the grand stage of life. So right now, in this very moment, are you ready to renounce? Do you truly wish to enter the state of non? Share your thoughts below in the comments. Thank you for listening. If you found this video meaningful, please share it with those who may need to hear this message. Don't forget to leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to catch new videos every week. Once again, thank you, Andy. See you in the next one.